Hello, it's Creature Science. Feel this: cold mountain air, bamboo leaves flicker, and a black and white shape vanishes 2 meters away. Camouflage, not cuteness, keeps wild pandas alive. And that same trick makes even counting them a serious challenge. Stick around, because today we are diving into the full story of giant pandas. Life in captivity, the realities in the wild, the science behind their survival, and the politics and money tied up in keeping them. When you walk into a zoo and see a panda lounging around, chomping down bamboo, it looks pretty idyllic. But in captivity, it is not all easy. Pandas need a very specific type of bamboo, and not every variety works for them. If they do not get the right kind, they can run into digestive problems and other health issues quickly. Zoos and wildlife reserves spend a ton of effort making sure the bamboo is right, and they try to build enclosures that mimic the forests of central China as closely as possible. Pandas need space to climb and roam, so creating a naturalistic environment with room to play is key. Without that, their health and happiness drop off quickly. And it is not a one-and-done setup. Keepers rotate fresh stalks through the day, check moisture, trim splinters, and haul out leftovers so the next feed is clean. The habitat itself needs seasonal tweaks: shade and chilled rocks in summer, windbreaks, and dry dens in winter, so their bodies do not burn energy fighting the wrong climate. Pandas eat a lot. Basically, their daily routine is eat, rest, eat again. Even though they are technically bears, they are herbivores, with bamboo making up nearly their entire diet. In the wild, they spend most of their day foraging, and that same rhythm is maintained in captivity. But here is where things get tricky. Pandas are solitary by nature. In the wild, they only come together for mating season, and even then, they are shy and avoid each other as much as possible. In zoos, they are often housed in pairs or small groups. That setup can encourage social behavior that does not happen naturally, sometimes reducing stress, but also sometimes throwing their instincts off. Keepers have to read the room hour by hour. Who is posturing? Who needs a visual barrier? Who benefits from a scent swap on a log rather than a face-to-face interaction? Small choices like that keep the peace and keep cortisol down. Communication is another thing that gets overlooked. Wild pandas use loud calls to reach each other across mountain valleys, especially in spring when mating is on. In captivity, they still vocalize and use body language, but zoos often add enrichment, things like toys or climbing structures to keep them stimulated. Breeding programs depend on this. Seeing a panda cub take its first wobbly steps is a huge deal, because captive breeding is one of the strongest tools we have got to prevent extinction. It is not just about adding numbers. It is about maintaining genetic diversity, which keeps the species resilient long-term. That means swapping genetic material between facilities, tracking lineages, and timing introductions to the hour when hormones line up. Miss the window, and you are waiting another year. But that leads into a debate. On one side, captive environments give pandas consistent food, medical care, and a level of protection they would never have in the wild. They live longer, sometimes much longer, than their wild counterparts. On the flip side, studies show captivity messes with their internal biology. For example, living outside their natural latitude can disrupt circadian rhythms. Captive pandas also have different gut microbiomes. Researchers found more starch-metabolizing genes and even antibiotic resistance genes compared to wild pandas. That makes sense when you realize their diet in captivity often differs slightly, but it is also a big red flag. If a panda raised in captivity gets released, their gut bacteria might not be equipped for wild bamboo diets, making survival harder. So prep work before release is not just teaching find bamboo. It is gradual diet shifts, minimal antibiotics, and exposure to wild scents and sounds, so their bodies and brains recalibrate. And that brings us to the fieldwork. The documentary Pandas, Born to be Wild, spent 3 years in the Qinling Mountains, tracking wild pandas. The footage was groundbreaking. Unlike the playful, cuddly vibe we see in captivity, wild pandas are solitary and territorial. What surprised the crew most was how far they travel in mating season, tens of kilometers a day looking for a partner. Global positioning system data suggested it. but actually seeing droppings in areas with no bamboo confirmed they are moving around a lot more than anyone expected. And when they got within 10 to 15 meters of a wild panda, they noticed something striking: awareness. In captivity, pandas look chill, almost absent-minded. But in the wild, their eyes track everything. They sniff, they scan, they know exactly what is going on. You can hear the forest go quiet, then a twig crack, then nothing. Just the sense that something big made a decision and slipped away. Captive pandas, though, live like royalty. Best food, best medical care, handlers watching over them 24/7. In some cases, they are treated better than humans. Filmmaker Jackie Poon even said pandas are probably the most prioritized animals in captivity, and it is not necessarily a bad thing because science from captivity has helped protect wild habitats. By understanding pandas in controlled environments, researchers were able to prove the importance of preserving bamboo forests, which protect not only pandas, but millions of other species in those ecosystems. The data turned into policy: protected zones, funding for patrols, and standards for corridors that let bears move without crossing roads or farmland. Still, some behavior only shows up in captivity. Panda kindergarten is a good example. Young cubs get to play together and bond with caretakers, something wild cubs do not do. In nature, baby pandas spend most of their time sleeping in trees, avoiding danger. Captivity forces them into close quarters, so they play more. It is adorable, but it is also unnatural. Wild pandas, on the other hand, vocalize loudly during mating season, their calls echoing through the mountains. And for an animal that looks so bold in black and white, they are shockingly camouflaged in bamboo forests. Between the shifting light and shadows, you can be a few meters away and not see them at all. That is why censuses lean on camera traps, track plates, and deoxyribonucleic acid from droppings rather than eyeballs. Rangers grid out valleys, set motion sensors at game trails, and later match patterns on fur and genetic fingerprints to avoid double counting. It is slow, but it is the only way to get numbers that mean anything. Now, let us pivot to the politics and economics. In 2022, the Smithsonian's National Zoo threw a party for 2-year-old Xiao Qi, complete with a fruitcake. It doubled as their Pandaversary, marking 50 years of keeping pandas. They called it an unprecedented achievement, but not everyone saw it as a win. According to Ron Swace-Good from the International Union for Conservation of Nature Giant Panda Expert Team, zoos actually lose money on pandas. Leasing, feeding, housing, and veterinary costs, these outweigh the revenue pandas bring in. So why keep them? A lot of critics argue it is more about politics than conservation. Big crowds, big media hits, big donor dinners, pandas pull attention, and attention pulls influence, even if the balance sheet says otherwise. The Memphis Zoo is a recent example. Their panda Lele died in February 2023, allegedly from heart disease, but animal advocacy groups had been warning for years about poor conditions. Concerns included malnourishment, weight loss, dental issues, skin disease, behavioral problems, and chronic stress. Groups pushed for Lele and Yaya, the other panda, to be returned to China before their scheduled April 2023 deadline. The zoo kept them anyway. After Lele's death, Yaya was finally sent back, but the situation highlighted a bigger truth. Captivity does not always guarantee welfare. The lesson is pretty blunt. Contracts and headlines do not equal quality of life. Oversight matters, audits matter, and transparency matters. Wild conservationists argue in situ efforts, protecting pandas in their natural habitat, are far more effective. Pandas breed slowly, so recovery takes time. But threats like poaching, deforestation, and human activity can be reduced with protected reserves. Right now, there are 1,864 wild pandas, according to the 4th Giant Panda Census, and about 600 in zoos and breeding centers worldwide. China has expanded panda reserves to 67, which is progress, but roughly 30% of wild pandas still live outside protected areas. That gap shows why habitat-focused conservation is essential. It also shows where the next wins are. Stitch isolated pockets together, buffer the edges from logging and roads, and give bears safe passage to find mates and fresh bamboo after landslides or die-offs. Today, zoos do not get pandas for free. They are leased under contracts, often at $1 million United States dollars per year, like the San Diego Zoo's 12-year research loan. 70% of that fee supposedly goes to panda conservation, but there is no transparency about how it is spent. All pandas remain Chinese government property. After 10 years, they go back, and any cubs must return to China by age 2. That means even young Xiaoqi Ji in Washington District of Columbia could be shipped back, depending on diplomacy. For audiences, it looks like a celebration. For keepers, it is logistics. For pandas, it is a passport they never asked for. So while pandas are the global mascot of conservation, their own welfare often gets sidelined. The irony is heavy. They have become a commodity, valued for economics and politics more than their intrinsic worth. And unless that changes, wild populations are the ones who suffer. Captive breeding can help with numbers, but without protecting and linking habitats, the species is always at risk. If there is a lever that moves everything at once, it is habitat. More of it, connected better, managed smarter. The future is not hopeless, though. Panda numbers in the wild are climbing, slowly but steadily. With 1,864 counted in the wild, up from lower numbers in past decades, conservation projects are working. The push now is for more reserves and better corridors, linking fragmented populations. If that continues, pandas may finally pull back from the edge of extinction, not because of birthday cakes or photo opportunities, but because their forests are left standing. And if zoos stay in the picture, the bar has to be high. Transparent contracts, welfare that passes independent checks, and research that clearly feeds back into the mountains where the bears belong. And that is the real story of giant pandas. Part science, part politics, part tragedy, and part progress. Thanks for sticking through this deep dive. I will catch you in the next one.